All right. Hello, hello, and welcome. I believe you should be hearing me. This is Justin Coletti of Sonic Scoop, and today I'm here with one Michael Pearson-Adams. Michael Pearson.
Hey,
Hey, it's Michael. Say hello to the good people.
g'day, people. Hope everybody's doing well. Welcome to my studio. I'm super sorry about the mess in the background. I've blurred most of it out for you, though. So
It looks delightful. You
it's a
look
working studio, so it's a bit chaotic.
little do people know. In my shot, everything looks neat and tidy behind me always, but what's in front of me is a total mess, and no
Well,
one
this
gets.
is the thing. It's like on different angles that are out of camera. It's like I generally find that that's where I store stuff, and it's like there's stuff on the floor. It's 1 minute this is a TV studio, next it's a live streaming studio, next it's a music studio. So,
Right.
is what it is. Welcome to life in the pandemic.
Well, in case you guys aren't familiar with Michael Pearson-Adams, he is a master trainer over at Waves. I know that's not your official title, but that's what I'm going to call you for today's
That's
purposes. I think
fine.
you're Director of Education. Is that kind of your official title?
I'm a product manager at Wave, so I create some of the products, and I'm also the director of training and development. So I
Training and
train the
development.
trainers.
Hmm.
I train the trainers. I create training courses, and I write things like all the curriculums for SoundGrid certification, EDU certification. I write all that and manage all that.
Wonderful.
Uh,
And
yeah,
also, I might add, an accomplished producer, engineer in your own right. You've worked with In Excess, Kylie Minogue, Tina Arena, Crowded House, Ice House, a whole bunch more. So
bunch of
you're the person.
Aussies, and then I moved over here to work with Creed
Mhm.
and Shakira, and yeah, so it's an interesting life.
Yeah. Well, great to have you here. And we're going to be taking your questions on all things mixing and mastering techniques, tips, and tricks, and especially wherever Waves plugins are concerned, because Michael here knows all these tools inside and out. We already have some questions coming in from the audience. Super nice to have you guys here. We're seeing your questions come in. So thank you. We got people from Brooklyn, we got people from the Netherlands. Let us know where you're joining us from in the comments down below. Before I get to your new questions that are coming in, I want to let more of them kind of gather here. I just want to start off by asking you about a few plugins that we saw a bunch recently on this channel. We had a presentation sponsored by Waves for MixCon, a MixCon masterclass with Quentin Q. Gilkey, who's an
Cool. Yeah,
amazing
I know.
producer,
It went
engineer,
well
and mixer.
apparently.
Yeah, he's worked with the likes of Eminem, Dr. Dre, Brandy, Anderson Paak, The Game, Earl Sweatshirt, a whole bunch of stuff. And he did a pop
Nice.
mix for us. And two of the things that I saw, well, actually three plugins, I want to say I saw a bunch on his mix. One was the MV2, one was the CLA Mix Hub. I saw the Bluey compressor a whole bunch. And I also saw the Center plugin a bunch. I want to ask you a little bit about the MV2 plugin, because I think this is one of these things that's
Can
become
you
fast.
enable screen sharing so I can share my screen?
Absolutely. Let me get it up here.
Now, folks out there, I'm just going to ask my host a question. So I'm not going to see any of these questions, are they? Because I don't see any in the chat on this end. So I'm assuming that
That
this
is
is
right. If you want to see the
no,
questions,
no,
you
no. I'm
could
good.
log in, but I'm going to read them all for you here just
That's
to make
fine.
your life easier.
All right. So can I share my screen now?
Yes, you should be
Yes,
able
I
to.
can. Beautiful. Okay. So let's share. Don't share sound because I'm doing it a smarter way. Okay. So now you should be able to see my screen.
We've got it. Thank you, Michael.
Okay, beautiful. So the one you asked about was MV2, right?
Yeah, it's one we saw him use a lot, and I'm not sure if everyone really knows what's going on under the hood there. So if you can give us a sense of what's really happening with it and what it's most useful for, I'd love to get your sense for that.
No problem. So I'm going to add MV2 to this channel here. The channel that I'm adding this to is this loop right here, this little sample. And just so you have an idea of what it sounds like with, let's do that. I'm using Studio One. So, okay, so that's my loop, right?
Hmm.
Now I have two plugins on this right now. If I add MV2, the first one is Q10, which is my go-to EQ. And all I'm doing with Q10, just so you know that there's no chicanery and no circus tricks going on here, is I'm just cutting my lows and cutting my highs, because without it, there's a bit of a rumble, and those highs over 4K just can get a bit out of the way. So that's all that's doing. Now, if we go back to MV2, where this plugin comes in super handy, let me make it a bit bigger so if anybody's watching on their phone. Okay, so MV2 is what we call a low-level, high-level dynamic compressor. And what this means is that we take the low signal, so if we were talking drums, etc., you could call that the ghost notes if you wanted to, and we bring them up, and then we can control the high levels, like the things that are really out there, and push them down. Now, where do you use this plugin? Everywhere. I use this on vocals, I use this on drums. I love using this on things like acoustic guitars. If you've got somebody who's been playing a guitar, this is playing a guitar, by the way, and they've been mic'd, and they tend to rock around sometimes, or they tend to really play some of the notes harder and some of them softer. Sometimes you have ghost notes that you want brought up in the mix, but you don't want it to sound compressed, and this is where this comes in really handy. So first things first. So right now, this plugin is doing nothing. Justin, you still hear me okay?
Yep.
Oh,
yep.
Okay, beautiful. So what I want to do in this case is I'm going to press play here with everything in the music, let you listen to it for a sec, and then I'll show you what MV2 can do. So one of the things this has is it has that boom, 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 and it fades away. So I'm going to stop it fading away, but I'm not going to raise the levels of the mix at all. Here we go. Cool. So now, first things first, I try super hard when I'm mixing not to solo unless I absolutely have to. You will never find somebody that listens to a song on the radio and goes, you know what, that bass guitar sounds great if it would solo. It just doesn't happen. And if you solo and process things too much when they're soloed, you tend to get an unrealistic idea of how something is actually going to sound, because it's not going to sit in the mix right. So let's do this with it not soloed. Okay. Okay, now I'm going to bypass. Put it back in. So now, all those faded notes, they last a lot longer. So there's two things I did. Firstly, I brought the low level way up, like 26 dB up. I squeezed the top a bit to get a bit more out of those high levels and just kind of make it a bit sharper. But the most important thing about all of this is I also adjusted my output, because it's really easy with a plugin like this to go, wow, that sounds great, and then you just realize you just made it louder. So that's before. It's subtle, but it's there because all you want is that presence. But if I take the output and I put that back to 0, so now let's bypass it. That's going to mess up your mix. That's going to mess up your mix big time. So you've got to match your gain on any of these kind of plugins. So MV2, seriously, love it. And it comes with everything from gold up, and usually it's like $29, $39 by itself. I love this plugin.
Cool. Very cool. And just so I understand what's going on in the hood a little bit better, is there specific crossover for some of this stuff, secret sauce? Are you allowed to talk about kind of crossover and stuff on it, or attack time or anything like that?
So this is kind of like a simpler version of its big brother. Its big brother is a plugin called Max Volume, And what max volume does is, it's a bit older. This plugin is probably older than some of the people on this channel. We made this about 20 years ago. This lets you select what you're doing. So in this case, if I wanted to use this plugin instead of MV2, so let's just remove MV2, and now I've got max volume. Okay, so now I'm just going to turn on the low level. I'm not going to turn on the high level at all. So I'm going to turn on the low level. I still have to match my output, but I can do it here. So what we're doing is we're assessing in real time, actually look ahead, we're assessing the dynamics that are in your signal, and we're not looking at kind of like specific pieces. We're looking at the, so for example, if I had, I mean, this is a remix, well actually it's just an EDM progressive trance track, so there are no acoustic drums, but if I had acoustic drums, as an example, low level would bring up all those ghost notes. If you've got a guitar, it's going to bring up the slides into more presence. It's a bit like being able to re-mic something. Max volume, though, there's a bit more to it. So I generally go for MV2. I like MV2 for a quick play. It's really good. Love it.
Yeah, very cool. All right, a couple of questions already coming in from the audience that I want to see if we can address. Peter Lawson is asking about using Waves plugins to produce voiceover. I'd love to come back to that. Well, maybe we can do this one briefly. He would love to see something in depth on that. I don't think this live stream's time to go super in depth on voiceover, but do you have just a handful of favorite plugins you might reach for?
Yes. Yes, yes, and yes. So let's create a new track. Let's call it a note, and so we now have this new track. As soon as I can actually, there we go. Okay, so let's call it VO. Now, if you're doing a voiceover, there's a couple of things to take into account. Usually, you're the one doing the voiceover. You're then sending that voiceover, and somebody else is mixing you in. So you want to be able to compress your voice and make sure that when you're right up next to it, you're actually doing a voiceover that can be used. But you also want to make sure you don't compress things too much. It's a mixture of EQ and compression, and one of my favorite tricks is to use a plugin, a chainer first. So it's called Studio Rack. This is free to anybody who has Waves plugins and a Waves account. They can register a copy of Studio Rack for free. Now, I do a lot of voiceovers because I voice a lot of our videos. Now, this is where this comes in handy. Rather than me remembering a compressor setting, an EQ setting, and everything else, what I can do is I can go, okay, right, so here's my cheap mic fix. This is one I use for if somebody's coming in on a lapel. If I am using this mic on, then I'll bring up this. So here's my own plugin chain. First plugin first, NS1. Now, NS1 is probably the simplest noise reduction plugin you can use. You put it up to around 15 or 20. It's going to pull out the consistent background noise like room hum, air conditioners. It's going to pull it out for you. The second one, which is a plugin for every voiceover guy, is Arvox. Arvox is a 25-year-old compressor specifically for voices that has gate compression and gain all in one. And it's a bit like a swan. It looks really smooth and easy on the surface, and there's a ton of things going on underneath. The only thing you really have to do with this plugin is literally just do that and pull it down, and then it will bring up your vocals. And then a bit of gate to get rid of in between. The next one would be the Q10. This is the most used EQ in the world. Random fact, this is also the plugin that we launched the company with. We released this plugin in 1991. I've been using it since 1993. And then, so NS1, Arvox, Q10, Sibilance Live. The reason I say Sibilance Live is because it's a real-time look-ahead de-esser that separates your S's from your actual voice. I'll show you that live in a second. And then in case you're using a microphone that doesn't have a lot of body to it, or you need to actually bring in a teeny weeny bit more presence that isn't compression, this one, R-Bass.
Yeah.
Now, what R-Bass does is it gives you very, very subtle, what I like to explain as parallel bass. So it will bring up, rather than giving you mud and rumble, what R-Bass will do is put some deepness into your voice and sound like you're right up on a microphone, even if you're not. So what was the guy's name again who asked the question?
That was, I'm going to have to pull that back up, Peter Lawson.
Okay, Peter.
How was that, Peter?
Peter, take a picture of the screen right now, and that's your chain right there. Studio Rack with the NS1, RVox, Q10, Sibilance, and R-Bass. And then you can turn things on and off. So if I don't want R-Bass for something, I can just turn it off. But this in Studio Rack for a voiceover is brilliant because I just bring it up, everything comes out all at once, and I'm there.
Brilliant. All right. Let's keep on going here and get through some more questions. I think that was super great, super thorough.
Sure.
I would love to get to John Terrell asks, are Waves Instruments V12 SoundGrid compatible yet? I'd love to use them with minimal latency.
Okay, cool. So firstly, are they V12? Yes. And here's one of them right here. So this is one of my favorite pianos. Is it SoundGrid compatible? No. But there's a really simple reason why. When you're dealing with DSP, and what he's asking is, SoundGrid is a network that we have that gives you DSP with a server and lets you track at low latency through plugins and offload the DSP to a server. So your computer has less pressure, you have less than 40 samples latency. Plugins have fairly consistent, really consistent DSP requirements. Mm-hmm. The DSP requirements and CPU requirements of a VI go up and down like waves in a hurricane. And that creates a huge problem for us when it comes to how to deal with it with a server. Are we working on it? Yes, absolutely. Is it available yet? Sorry, John, no. But it's top of our minds, I promise you.
Wonderful. Good answer. All right, let's keep on going here. Alex Jimenez asks, I have a question about vocal mixing. How do you get a more airy and present vocal in the highs without it sounding too harsh?
Okay, so here we go again. Okay, so this is a fairly good example. Let me go to small. Let me move it up. Okay, so you guys all know this is a song that's not actually even released yet, which is why I can use it like this, because it's not going to flag anywhere. Mm-hmm. It might in a couple of months, but it's not going to now. So here we have my vocal. Now, let me just, okay, so here's my vocal. So I have, so let's pull all the effects out for a second so you can just hear the vocal. I'll be by your side. You hear that okay?
Yeah.
When you wanna hide. Okay, cool. So now if I put that vocal in the mix by itself, just like that, and pull that out as well, it will... I'll be by your side. Okay, first things first, I can actually pull that down a bit, so let's do that again. I'll be by your side. Okay, so now this vocal is tuned because I don't like having tuning stuff in my session when I'm actually doing a final mix, so I tuned it after I done and then ported it in. So that part's done. The effects part, though, is not. And I have two effects here. So I've got MPA effects. You see where I'm looking? Right here, waving my mouse around?
Yeah.
Okay, so I have two effects. I have MPA effects and I have vocal effects. And then actually on the plugin, on the vocal itself, I have this one right here. So, okay, so first things first, let's have a listen. I'll be by Too much. Your side. Let's go to this bit. When you're feeling blue. It adds a very subtle amount of just a bit of fatness in the lower part of it. Now, the next one, let's go MPA effects. So all the way over here, and let's talk about session organization at some point. MPA effects is literally H reverb. So let's add that first. Make sure I'm on. Yeah, I'm on. So I'll be by your side. Bit of reverb, okay? So now this was something I was actually working on before I called Justin. So this is actually a work in progress, and this is going to help answer your question. So straight after that reverb, I add a one-band EQ. Now, the reason for this is if you want a really airy vocal in pop, rock, or any kind of EDM, you've got to understand what the concept of reverb is. Reverb is saying, oh my God, I love this so much, I want to repeat it 1,000 times over the next second, over and over again, and then just fade it out. Now, if you're doing that with exactly the same frequencies that the vocal has, then you're potentially going to muddy up your mix, and all that airiness that you want is going to be gone. So what you do is you make sure that the reverb and the delays you're using are not using the same frequencies, or at least are not using some of the lower ones. So double click on that frequency. Let's do a cut. Turn it back on. There we go. So. I'll be by your. I'll be. Okay, so I want you to listen, Mr. Vocal Question and everybody else. I'm going to play this for a second without the EQ on and just the reverb, and then I'm going to add the EQ, and you tell me the difference. I'll be by your side. Okay, now I'm going to play it with the EQ. I'll be by your side. Huge difference, and it means that you're not constantly repeating yourself. But this also means that I can actually, if I want to, I can actually take this send up a bit. I'll be by your side. So let's put that back in the mix for a second, and I'm just going to pull this EQ out, and then I'll do that, and then I'll put the EQ in. I'll be by your side. Okay, now with the EQ on. I'll be by your side. So not only does that cut in the lower end actually pull out the frequencies that are repeating, but it also makes it perceive like there's less reverb than there actually is. So
yeah, I'm so glad you bring this up. This is something that I'm always talking about, making sure you EQ your reverb sends or returns.
You have to.
Yeah, absolutely.
So anyway, so that's effects one. So that's effect just to stereo out the vocal a bit. And then, okay, so now I go on to vocal effects, which is a bit more complex. So let's first take a look at the rack. So this is I call this the MPA delay recipe, and I can email it to you and you can post it out if anybody wants it. This is how I create airiness in any remix I do, any vocal I do. I'm going to put it on first. I'll put it on somewhere else in the mix so there's a bit more going on. Is everybody having a good time out there? Good. Okay,
yeah,
so
I think after this is an awesome deep dive. After this, I think we'll go to a rapid fire round to see if we can get through a few more of these. But this is awesome.
That's fine. I'm good to go. Okay, so have a listen to this. This is with the reverb and the EQ on one send, and then Renaissance verb into H delay, into Renaissance verb, into a one band EQ, into MV2.
Wonderful. Just a tremendous polish and control. And I might have missed it. I'm sorry. What was the delay there in addition to the reverb that you're running?
So that's H delay.
That's H delay. All right.
That's H delay on ping pong mode. Now I'm going. The ping pong mode makes a huge amount of difference. So if I'm so let's see what all of these are doing. And then, Justin, I promise you, I'll make this.
No, this is great. If we were going to spend a while on anything, this is it. I mean, you're making a gorgeous sounding vocal here.
So I'm gonna take all of these out, and because a lot of people say, MPA, you're crazy. Why are you putting 2 reverbs and a delay and a compressor and everything all in this one place? And then when I explain it to them, they say I've ruined their lives and they have to redo all their mixes. So I'll be by your side. Okay, so that's just the MPA effects mix. Okay, so that's just the reverb on the main voice. So if I pull that out, I'll be by your... So we're back to that. So first things first, I'm going to add Renaissance Verb. Now with Renaissance Verb, the first thing I want to show you is the EQ. There's just a little hump in the middle. I've got no low end, no high end. I'll be by your side. Okay, so that's there. Now
that's happening pre or post EQ?
That's happening...
Pre or post reverb?
That's happening pre.
Pre-reverb, yeah. Good.
Yeah, so... I'll be by your side. Okay, so that's the reverb. I mean, the delay. Now, I'm going to take another Renaissance Verb, and I'm going to put it after that. So... I'll be by your side. And now, just for shits and giggles, let's verb after. Let's pull that. I'll be by your side. And the reverb before the delay makes it more gentle into the delay, and the reverb after the delay smooths it out so it's less staccato. So if I pull out this second reverb, I'll be by your side. It's very, very on the notes and very precise. It's too precise, but if I put a reverb on it, it makes it brings it up and gives you a lot more. I'll be by your side.
Yeah, it becomes a little more dreamlike. Those repeats become a little more smeared.
And that's where the magic is, my friend. So now the other thing we have to do is we have to do this again. So let's get rid of the repeat frequencies. I'll be by your side. So now we've got that dreaminess, but now also I want to be able to sometimes bring this up so that it actually... So now I'm squeezing that low end a bit. So so let's... Okay, so now you'll notice with my shortcut here in MV2, as I push up the low end, I also automatically gain match. So... I'll be by your side. Let's pull that down a bit. So there's a huge amount going on here, but what it does is it creates this airiness that he asked about and probably thought was a really simple fix. But if you have Studio Rack, it actually is a simple fix. It's like, and one of the good things about Studio Rack is, as you see here, I have control with knobs of my H delay feedback. I have control of my low EQ, so if I touch that and put that there, I don't even need to bring up the plugins. I can just move that frequency where I want it. I've built in wet dry on the reverb before and after, and then I've built in my low level on the MV2. So
wonderful. Gorgeous sound, Michael. I'm really impressed. And just a quick question here. You are running this, it looks like, as a send and return, and I see that there's... but how many elements are you sending to this? It seems to be really crafted for that vocal. Are you using it on other elements? And why would you prefer using such a specialized, tailored effect on a send return versus a insert on a vocal?
For this, I like doing it as a send return because there are at least 5 plugins involved, and if I have 7 vocal tracks that I want to send through, then I'd like maybe 2 of these that I can send them to and adjust the frequencies accordingly, rather than having 6 or 7 just on the track and then having to really go to town on each of them with wet, dry, and send.
Absolutely, yeah.
I do occasionally put something on the actual vocal, but never this one, because if I put this one on a vocal, it just sounds like it sounds like somebody's singing in a toilet.
Yep.
Unless you pull all the wet dries down to like 2%. So
Right. Yeah, well, really powerful approach, and as powerful as computers have gotten, DSP is still a thing. So using that many.
this is all native too, So it's this is all happening natively. I mean, this session is going to be even bigger, but it's not a small session.
Now, here's a good question from Kyle Resto. He asks, can you think of any creative uses for Waves plugins that are designed for one thing but work great on another?
Oh God, absolutely. I mean, I do a fairly consistent mixing seminar called Thinking Outside the Box While You're Mixing in the Box. And say, for example, RVox. I use RVox on drums a lot. So, for example, let's go to my kick as my main kick. Okay, so let's add RV, RVox. Okay, cool. So let's bring it when the kick comes in. Tell me if I need to bring this volume down when the kick comes in. Is that all right?
Sounds good here. Let us know in the comments if you guys are sounding good to you guys.
All right, cool. So RVox. Now, where RVox can come in super handy, there's my kick. It's usually pink. So let's go. Okay. So RVox lets me So I can compress this fairly nicely with just this one plugin. I use RVox a lot on that. The other thing that I use on drums a lot is Renax. If I decide I want a where's Renax gone? Renax. There we go. If I decide I want a really kind of grungy kick, or grungy snare, this will give me one. This is designed for guitars, so what this does is it intentionally breaks things up as it's compressing it. So I've gone from that to that intentionally. So if you want to grunge something up, Renax. This also works. I used to use this a lot on Scott Stapp's vocals in Creed. One of the first things I'd put on his vocal, because he's really graspy, is I'd put Renax. Because that would take that raspiness while he was screaming at the top of his lungs, and it would accentuate it. So yeah, I love that plugin. Now, the other one that I use a lot on things, and this is another plugin that people think, no, you can only use this on a master. It's a limiter. So I use the L3 low latency, which is 0.3 milliseconds or something like that. It's tiny. So so let's add. So I've gone from that to that. So I use that a lot if I want something to really kind of like spring out at you. Luckily with this kick drum is actually kind of, I think it's made up of like 3 kick drums if I remember rightly. I have a library of kick drums that I like to use because the low, medium, and high frequencies are all mixed and matched the way I want them. The bottom line is there's not one plugin we make that can't be used for something else. You just have to look at it and go, okay, how can I break it? I mean, you have 32 undos or more on every single plugin. Using a plugin on something is it's like the easiest thing in the world. There's no commitment whatsoever. So limiters and vocal plugins on kick drums. I use Butch Vig vocals on snares a lot. Yeah, it's there's lots of stuff like that.
Good stuff. And another really interesting question from the same fellow, let me see if I can pull it back up here, is Kyle Resto asks, what are some, sleeper Waves plugins? So everyone uses RVox, RComp, L2, H delay, etc. But there are a few that are sleepers that you think more people should know about, and if they only use them, they'd be like, "Wow, why haven't I been using this?"
Okay, so the first one is MV2, which was the first one we talked about. The reason I'm glad that Quentin used that is because it is a sleeper. The amount of people who I've sold Mercury bundles to or large bundles over the years and then come back and gone, "Have you used MV2?" No, I've never seen that one. It's the simplest compressor, but it's also one of the best compressors. It's just an amazing plugin. Another one would be, it's like, okay, so let's find something different to work on for a sec. Let's go, yeah, okay, so let's go.
We did have a special request about MV2. If you want to check it out at a certain point, one person was asking, how do you use MV2 on a vocal?
It depends on the vocal. I mean, it's like you've got to have a problem to fix before you use a compressor.
Yep.
I mean, it's when you ask, how do you use something, the first thing you need, step one is have a problem and know what it is. Yeah. Step two is have an idea before you actually go on, okay, so what do I need to fix this problem? Therefore, what kind of plugin am I going to move to? So we could get back to that. But now, one of the plugins that I find a lot of people don't seem to know about is this one, Pumper.
Yeah, it's my first time seeing it myself.
So I use this on... okay, so let's move to small again. Let's move that down. Okay, so first things first... let's find my, where's my girls? Where are my girls? All of my instruments and all of my tracks have, there we go. There we go. Okay, cool. So I have this here, my choir, right? Now, for that first part, that's fine. However, when the drums kick in, we need something slightly different. So you'll see here that the automation is automatic. I need to put that on read so I don't mess it up. There we go. Okay. So in here, very little. Here, though, it's the automatic ducking effect, so...
Is it possible to turn up the level on that track just a little bit so we can hear it better? I hear what's going on, but we have one request for it to go a little louder.
Yes. Okay, so first things first. So there's my choir. Okay, so now I need her to be a bit more in the groove. So she's louder than she should be in the mix, but watch this knob. Watch the knob, folks. So that gives you the effect that you usually only get by side chaining.
Right.
So not only do I have that automated on there, but I also have it on every single one of my effects. So if I go down here to this vocal effects, for example, so if that's not there, it's kind of... Let's put it back in. So where all these things used to be side chains so that you could actually connect it to something, send, etc. Now you can just put one knob pumper on. I use this a ton. You can change the rate from 1/1, half, 3/8, quarter, etc. You can also offset if you want to, and then by different degrees. And then you've got this knob that's just literally less to more. And it's automatable, which I do a ton. A DAW should work for you. You shouldn't work for it. So when I get to do my final mix, all those faders are just going to move themselves.
Gotcha. So the big thing with that one knob pumper is really why you choose it over side chaining is the simplicity of it more than anything else?
God, yeah, absolutely. I can literally just put it on there, and so where's right? So if I hold on. Don't have it in that one, but I do have it in... There you go. There it is again. So in this case here, this one... And... It's a tiny effect, but if I pull it out, it's... So that's fine, but it's much better if it's in a mix, if it's actually in beat. Because it adds more movement. And I use this regardless of whether I'm doing EDM or rock or pop. A lot of the time, especially with a pad, if you... Because this is not just an effect. I need to clarify that. So here I have a pad. Now, if I put this pad and then I bring in, say, for example, let's bring in some of my drums, right? So, and let's go to somewhere busy. All right, beautiful. Now, so here's my main pad. This pad is all the way through the song. However, one of the things that I need it to do is I need it to... Why does this keep on moving to another screen? I have 5 screens. It's too many screens.
On our side, we're still seeing your main screen. So
that's great, but the plugins, I have to keep on bringing them...
Oh, I see. Dragging
So I have my pad, right? So let's take off the plug. So there's a couple of things I'm doing. First is Q10. Again, I'm pulling out the frequencies I don't need. And then I'm bumping it up with this, which is that plugin that nobody seems to use. And then I've got one knob pumper, which is automated. So if I turn off the automation for a second, come on. Thank you. Auto off. That doesn't sit with the beat as well as that does. And even though it's only subtle, when you've got a ton going on, it can get muddy with the stuff that you're not pulling out of the way of the things that you want. And that's where one knob pumper comes in handy. And honestly, this is a plugin that people keep on saying, what is that? And I keep on telling them it's pumper.
Yeah, it sounds great, and it really is such an essential part of this style of music creation these days. It really does make everything.
But even it's like Andrew Sheps has used this on a guitar, acoustic guitar, to get out of the way of the kick. Him and I were talking about this the other day. Yeah. It's like the one knob plugins seem to have got a reputation as being a cheat or cheap. It's like the big guys, like the Greg Wells of the Andrew Sheps of the world, and the Jack Joseph Puigs and the Manny Americans, they all use all of these tools. If it saves them time and does the same thing as something that would take them 5 steps otherwise, then they'll do it because time is money.
Just because something was harder for you doesn't mean your results are better.
Exactly. It's all very well to say, I worked 12 hours on this mix, but if it doesn't sound any better than somebody who did it in 3 hours, then who cares?
Exactly. Nobody cares how long you spent on your mix.
Right. So I hope I answered that, man on the internet.
Beautifully. I think that was a good one. Thank you for those questions. Let me jump to a few more. So Kyle Resto, thanks for those. He also says, personally, I started using the Sheps Omni Strip a year ago and fell in love with it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Really love the podcast. Thanks for all the.
You want me to talk about that one for a second?
Sure.
Okay. So Shep's OmniChannel is probably so I don't need listen to, so let's move that. Let's Omni. Okay. So one of the things I love about this specific plugin is that this is literally Andrew's dream plugin, okay? So let's pull both those out. Firstly, when you open the plugin, it's not using any CPU. The only time it uses something is when you turn a knob or you turn something on. So if all you want is EQ, turn on EQ. Now the plugin is going to do something, and then you've got a full EQ strip. So, and then you've got a full range de-esser. So it's not just the de-esser frequencies that you usually have. This is a full range de-esser because Andrew wanted one, and he wanted to say, okay, I want to use this on drums or this or that, and pull out the frequency or bash it down. The other thing that I love about this is the fact that I can actually insert another plugin if I want to. So, say for example, I could bring in another Sheps Omni EQ channel, like a double of the one that's there, or I could bring in something like an F6 or an audio track, or even like an MV2. I could bring in, and I've done this quite a lot, I'll bring in an MV2 and I'll have this in the chain, and then that will sit there. But then I go, you know what? It's like, I think I want that over there before there. So you could create a chain of these things and then deal with it as you come. Now, regardless of how you use this plugin, let's go full reset. One of the things I love having this on my master is so that I can literally just go, okay, so mono, mids, sides, right, left, stereo. And then I can decide if I want to bring in a compressor or a gate or something else. I love this plugin. It's brilliant.
Great. All right. Let's go into a quick lightning round. There's going to be a couple more opportunities to go a little more in depth on a couple of things, but I want to get through some of the questions that have been coming through that we don't necessarily need to go into great detail on. So let me just throw a couple of those at you. So here's lightning round time. Question. Hold on, I just had it, and then I just lost it. Can you hint at anything coming for Waves version 13, asks Junkyard Sam. Are there going to be, excuse my ignorance on this one, but high DPI updates?
I can't tell you anything about version 13, really.
All right.
One thing, more convenience.
Okay, good stuff. Let's keep on going here. This is another question from John Terrell, who wanted to ask a little bit more about SoundGrid, the live solution. Is there a way to play guitar through a PRS amp sim in SoundGrid, but use a specialized third-party reverb, say Adaptaverb on Ascend, while in the input in Studio Rack?
It depends. Well, Studio Rack isn't used for live. If you're using live, you're using LB1, which is a SoundGrid's live mixer. Yeah, you could do an insert. I mean, the biggest thing with anything external to SoundGrid is you're in control of the latency, because we can't tell what the latency is.
Fair enough. All right. Let's go to another question from Peter Lawson here.
Hi, Peter.
I think he's asking me specifically. He says, "Scoop, what's your go-to Waves plugin for mastering?"
Yeah,
Many common
Scoop.
reasons, but give us yours. What are some of your top plugins that you put on most of your mastering sessions if you do that kind of?
If I'm doing a mastering session, there's two plugins I use, and they're both on this session because I wanted to have the ability to show them. It's like, you see, I saved this as Waves QA. First one, this one, Abbey Road TG mastering chain, and then L3 low latency multi. So both of these are on this chain. Now, those are my favorite two picks. We're on lightning round, so I'm not going into it.
Yeah, I'll give mine. I would say again, the TG here would absolutely be one that I would pick, and really any of the beautiful tape simulators that you guys make. I'm always adding some type of saturation, and there's a lot of mixes that need tape saturation, and the Waves ones are some of the best out there. I did have the luxury of using a Waves L2 hardware unit back in the day at Joe Lambert Mastering, but
I have one.
yeah, you got one there.
No, I have one.
Ever since I switched to all digital, I'm probably more likely to use the L3. But
If you're gonna try out, guys and girls, the Abbey Road TG mastering chain, go to this preset as one of your first. Dave Darlington, Pop Midside Widener. It's freaking amazing.
all right, here's one from Steve Salt. Let me see if I can get it right. Salt Zero. I hope I'm
His
saying
name's,
it right, Steve.
let's just say Steve.
All right, Steve. Will Waves ever implement oversampling options in their plugins?
That's not a zippy question. At this point in time, no.
All right. This person, Greg Fraser, just wants to say that the Shep's channel strip in parallel with Shep's particles is great, especially on drums.
Yeah, try adding parallel particles as the extra insert in OmniChannel, and you'll be in heaven.
All right. Here's one from, I hope I'm saying your name right, Agnabesh, who asks, is it good to record a guitar with a plug-in compressor on the insert?
I come from the analog world. I know I'm older than I look. We come from a world where you have to put some skin on the table and commit when you're on the way in so that it sounds good. I have no issues with putting processing on a recording on the way in. What I am opposed to is the term fixing it in the mix. Make sure that you commit to a sound and then know what you're committing to, and then know that you're going to have the freedom and the flexibility to deal with it after the fact.
Yeah. Trying to fix things in the mix, much bigger sin than trying to get sounds right going in, for sure.
Planning to fix it in the mix is just lazy.
Yes. Here's some feedback for you from Junkyard Sam, who says it would be amazing if Q10 could be updated with the RTAS display like in F6.
Okay, we'll think about it.
All right. Let's keep on going here. Here's one maybe in depth. Well, it's not a complicated plugin, so maybe it won't have to be that in depth. But Mitesh Kumar asks, can you explain about the S1 imager and how you go about using that?
Sure, I'm actually using it. I just got to remember which channel. So S1, I mean, what we're doing is we're widening the signal. It gets used a lot on pads. If you want something to kind of like sit out there rather than right underneath a vocal or a guitar or something, then S1 comes in really handy. I just now have to remember which track it was that I used it on. It's in one of the studio racks. There we go. First one. How good am I? Okay, so what was this? String melody. Okay. So string melody by itself sounds without this plugin on it. Sorry. Okay, so that's what it sounds like by itself. Back in the mix. Okay, so now let's put this back in. Now, this one is subtle, but it's supposed to be, because it's supposed to be something that's there. So let me just solo it and then bring it in and out. This is about mixing between mono, stereo, mids, and sides. You choose where you want something, especially when it comes to your pads. If all of your pads are just stereo and straight down the middle, you're going to end up with some mud, and you're going to have to deal with it. What I have here is I have this main pad, right? And then I have this pad, and then I have the string melody. So if I put all of those by themselves, they're using the same space. Whereas so now I'm going to press play again, and I'm going to bring in S1 halfway through. It pushes it all the way out to the sides. Now, this is one of those things that this is. If you ever want to know how old one of our plugins is, by the way, take a look at the manual. If the manual looks like this, then you're looking at a plugin that's at least 25 years old. So this is a 25-year-old plugin. This was one of the first of its kind, but the reason you want to use this is you want to place something in your mix, like objects, right? So you want to take it out or you want to bring it in. The opposite of this would be something like center.
Yep. Now, a comment I want to make about S1 is that, first of all, it sounds like you EQ'd it without having EQ'd it, because it's just freeing up that much space. And then another way that a lot of people don't think to use it, I think is useful, is taking stereo sources like this one, and instead, like, people will try to get width by panning a keyboard to the left, another one to the right. And back in the day, you would have been encouraged, hey, throw away one side. You don't really need one side of the synth. So just take your left and you can pan that hard left, and take a mono version of a synth, pan that hard right. But with this, you can use it as like a pan knob on stereo sources. And it's so much easier to automate, that asymmetry, one slider in here, that is to try to automate the two separate left and right pan knobs. So
I automate this all the time. It's like there's a part in the session where there's so much going on that the only two notes of the strings that really come through properly are kind of like the higher notes. So in that point, the automation will bring this back in so that other stuff can shine. The other thing that I think is important is your input mode, whether you're actually pulling in a signal from left to right or whether you're pulling in a signal from the mid sides. That can also change how you use this plugin and what you're using it on. But for pads especially, oh my God, this is a lifesaver.
Yeah. Now for stereo widening at the mastering stage, or if you were to do it at the mix bus stage, rather than on individual instruments, is S1 the one you'd be most likely to choose, or what would be the things you'd be most likely to choose?
I used to use S1, but now I use one of two plugins. I either use this one, or I'll use this one, Vitamin. Vitamin gives me the ability to stereo or mono a specific frequency in my mix, so I can go, okay, right, so there's my mids. I'm gonna mono my mids. Now I'm gonna take my high mids, put those out to the sides, bring this. I'm gonna take that and bring the low mids, bring them down a bit so it's all more centered, and then I'm going to bring up this and take my low end and mono it completely. So now so I use this a lot, but the other one I use is really simple. It's in TG mastering chain. I use the spreader.
Yep. And that's kind of like an elliptical filter, the spreader, or is it spreading everything, or is it spreading things above a certain point?
It's spreading pretty much everything. So if I okay, so let's do this. So I'm going to go to Dave Darlington, and I'm going to go to Pop Midside Widener, right? So now this is his preset. Now the first thing I'm going to do on this one, because I don't want to blow you up, and because I also have a limiter after this, is I'm going to pull the limiter out. And I'm going to just point out something. I don't mix into a compressor or a limiter. My mix has to sound good by itself. When I put something on the master bus of the channel is when I want to get an idea of if I'm adding something else, I'll put something on and then I'll take it off and bypass it again. But as soon as I put this on, now when I pull it off again, now it suddenly sounds kind of dull. So this plugin acts as really good glue, having the spread. The other thing about the spreader is it actually works in reverse. So I can actually use this to pull in some of my width if I need to as well. I use this plugin on pretty much every master chain I have now.
Yeah. John Terrell gives a shout out to Brower Motion, which he's been using a lot. That's one of yours, right?
Yes, it is. I'm also using that in this session. So if I go to, I think my leads, where is it? As string, one of these Studio Racks has, I use a lot of Studio Rack, by the way. One of these somewhere has a brow motion on it because I'm flipping from side to side. I just got to remember which one it is. Maybe it's one of the. There we go. Okay, so this instrument right here. So that's it by itself. And that's brow motion.
Yeah, very cool.
Is we talked about S1, moving stuff to the side. The other trick I like to use is moving stuff constantly so that it never gets in anything's way consistently. This is another great plugin for that.
Beautiful. Well, we've already gone over an hour here, guys, so we've got to be starting to wrap up this stream. Let's see if we can go through a couple more of these questions. Let me see if I can do slightly more lightning here. This has been wonderful. I love the deep dives in these. Honestly, I feel like if we had the time for it today, I could go 3 hours on this stream. You're just such a, a great resource here for us, Michael. But I want to see if I can get a few more of these questions at you before we have to end it for today.
Cool.
A couple of additional questions here. John Terrell asks, can you talk about the attack and decay parameters in F6 and how you think about using those?
That's kind of like a long one. And I don't really have anything on this session that I wanted to use the F6 on.
All right, fair enough. So let's skip that one for now. We've got a ton more questions that we could.
That was John Terrell, right?
Yeah.
Okay, John, so there's a really good tutorial that I did and another one that I think Pete Kepler did that are both on the website on the video page of that product page. And one of those, and I can't remember which one it was because it was like 5 years ago, we did talk about the attack and release.
All right. We had another similar question asking about, you had mentioned a seminar you do occasionally called Thinking Outside the Box While Mixing in the Box. Where can people find that one?
So if you go to waves.com/events, we're actually adding more of those to my event schedule in about a week. So if you're subscribed to the Waves newsletter, then you'll get an email about that with my face on the front going.
All right. Last few quick questions here. Online Piano Shul says, how do you treat the high frequency knob on the CLA2, especially on vocals? Great stream, by the way.
CLA2. So you mean the CLA? I mean, probably means the LA2A.
Yes, CLA2A. He actually corrected himself slightly further.
CLA2A. I was about to say we don't have a CLA2. We have a CLA2A. Okay, so if I was going to put that, so let's go CLA. Okay, we have so many CLA plugins now, I have to scroll. Okay, all right, so here we have the CLA2A. Again, I'm going to zoom it in so people, okay. So what's he asking?
He's asking, there is a high
Oh,
frequency
okay.
knob on it. And
So
how do you think about using that, especially on vocals?
very sparingly. One of the things about the LA2A and the LA76 is they add some glue, but they're very unforgiving unless you're careful. My suggestion on anything to do with vocals and the LA2A or the LA76 is make sure that you are listening to your vocals at the lowest possible volume you can in your headphones or your speakers in the mix while you're adjusting that, because otherwise you will, pardon my French, you will fuck it up. It's not forgiving. It's like, and you can twist that frequency and that tune just slightly too far, and the rest of the day you'll be going, something's wrong, and it's easy to miss because it's small.
Yep. A few more quick ones here. This is an
Go.
interesting question. Someone named Agnish again is asking about guitar recording. He says he's noticed a bunch of engineers that he's seen using a de-esser on guitar in the mix, but it's not something he ever figured would be useful. Have you seen that approach? Is it something you've done
Yeah,
yourself?
absolutely. So a guitar, a bit like a vocal, has, depending on what notes are being actually played at any given time, can have the same kind of like overload of frequencies that an S or a sh does. So if you've got somebody, then they're playing an acoustic guitar or they're playing an electric guitar that they're putting through a ton of pedals, and it's kind of really top endy, putting it through a de-esser can actually save you a lot, because a de-esser technically is kind of like a frequency compressor. So it's going to dampen it down and give you a lot less headache.
Yeah. High frequency transient control is the way that I'd think about it.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, absolutely. It's like I use all the tools possible, and I've used many DSs on many guitars.
All right. Here's another quick conceptual one from Tinkle Tink, who asks, can you ask
Oh,
Michael
sorry.
how
What
he
was the
feels-
username?
Right? Tinkle Tink.
Hi, Tinkle Tink.
Tinkle Tink is one of the machoist subscribers we have, I believe, who asks, can you ask Michael how he deals with mono compatibility things?
Okay, so really simple. It's like that's another reason I like a plugin like Shep's OmniChannel or this one on my master, because we're talking about moving all these things out, but you still have to make sure that when I press, I'd probably help if I'm not on solo. So there are 3 buttons that are really, really important. The mono one is one of them. The other ones are left and right. Here's why. So that's mono, right? That's left. That's right. Now, left and right are slightly different. Mono, so you want to make sure that you've got some consistency, because there are still, rather than hi-fi systems out there, and Justin knows this as well, we have to mix and master to what people are listening to. And with all due respect, and I love you all, most of you are listening on really shitty headphones that came with your phone or your tablet, or if you're upgraded, then you've got some studio monitors. But most of the listening audience are listening in what came with their phone. They didn't buy something extra, maybe Beats, but
Our
those
next
are
question
terrible.
is about this.
But it's like you have to make sure that anything down to a clock radio, your mix is going to translate on. And a lot of the time, coming out of the different sweatshops, you'll find clock radios that are literally left or right, or summed mono, but it could be any of them. So you have to mix for everything.
Yep. Well,
Tinkle Tink.
You've answered this one pretty well, but I don't know if you have anything else to add. But Xuan Shen asks, any recommend plugins to avoid distortion on small speakers or iPhones while making it still sound loud? For me, I don't think there's got one plugin, but go for it if you think you have a good answer for that one.
One of the easiest ways of doing that has nothing to do with plugins and all to do with how loud you're listening to your mix. When I am doing a mix and all the way through the mix, the volume I listen to is super low, like just above not audible. Why? Because I understand that everybody who's listening to my mix has background noise. They have life going on. They have traffic, babies crying, office, sirens, all this shit going on. Music's in the background. They're not going to hear it and go, oh, that's my favorite song, if the mix is done really, really loud. To get over distortion and mixing, you have to make sure that everything is spaced out and everything has room to breathe. What muddies up and puts distortion and clipping in a mix isn't so much everything being balls to the wall, it's things not having their own breathing space. And you can't tell that while you're listening to a mix loud.
Yeah, absolutely great.
He's a mastering engineer, and he'd tell me if I was wrong.
This is all great feedback. All right. Last question I have for you. This is an interesting one. It's not plugin specific, but a couple of people have asked a similar question regarding VU meters. So Black Music asks how to use a VU meter. Can you tell us in a way we can understand how to use it? And Junkyard Sam asks, VU meters, yeah, what's the correct level to hit a Waves analog plugin going in? So I guess that's kind of two different questions. One, do you use VU meters? How do you use them if you do? And are there particular operating levels that Waves plugins are best designed for, particular internal levels they should be shooting?
We're actually, our VUs are designed, whether it's the free VU meter or the ones in this plugin or anything else, our VUs are designed to be used by anybody for any, hold on, so ARTG, bridge. Beautiful. Okay, so now we have a bridge, and we have, let's go out. There's my gain reduction, there's my in. Okay, I should probably get myself out of mono. Okay. Okay, cool. So regardless of what VU meeting you're using, you want to make sure, let me just get rid of that plugin completely, that you actually know what you're aiming at. Now, honestly, I'm going to tell you, this is not selling a plugin. This is just fact. It's like the VUs I usually use are the ones built into the DAW I'm using.
Yep.
And so I can tell you right now, that is too hot. It's way too hot, which is why I'll have my mix down around -18. And it's also one of the reasons why I don't like mixing into a compressor, because it gives you a false sense of security. A compressor on your mix bus while you're still creating will pad everything and just end it up sounding gluey. You've got to make your mix sound good and airy without any safety net. Do the safety net afterwards. As far as VU meters, our VU meters deal with everything regardless of whether you're doing post-production, surround sound, or mixing in a bedroom or mixing in a major studio. But I personally aim between -18 and -16 when I'm mixing a track that I'm not mastering it, I'm mixing it.
Yep.
-16 and -18, because otherwise people like Justin have zero room to move. Or if you're mastering at home, you have zero room to move when it comes to actually figuring out what it should sound like in a mastering.
Well, it's absolutely been great, Michael, because this is my channel and my live stream. I get to ask the last question, which is, I'm curious to hear a little bit more about your approach to mix bus. It sounds like you really try to get a lot of your mix done before you mess around with the mix bus too much. At what stage do you do any mix bus processing? Is mix bus processing important to you? And if so, what kinds of processing are you most likely to do on the mix bus, if at all?
I will spend 80%. I mean, in this case, this is not just mixing. This specific track, it's my song, it's my creation. Therefore, it's been created from scratch and sent out by me. So this is not just a mix. This is a creation. One of the things I tell people is, if you're creating, that's fine if you want to put something on the master bus, but I want you to take it off before you send it to me to mix. And I want it to be -18 on everything. And I don't just mean pull the freaking master bus down to -18. I want your master bus on 0, and I want everything hitting -18. Yeah. And they go, that's really hard. And they go, in that case, you did it wrong on the way in. So when I get to putting anything on my master bus to get an idea of where I want to be, or the final bit of glue, is usually when I'm like, okay, so I'm not adding anything else. I'm kind of happy where this is. Now I'm just I'll bring in and I'll add this plugin, this one right here. Now, in this case here, if I take this plugin off and you put it on, there's not a dramatic difference. And that's what you're after. If you put a plugin on your master chain and there's a dramatic difference between when it's on and when it's off, then you've done something painfully wrong in your mix. Or there's something going on too intense in your compressor. All this is doing on my mix is doing that final bit of glue just around the edges. And that's what I want. The reason I would put an L3 on the end of it is to get an idea if I'm taking it out and I'm listening in the car, or I'm listening to it while I'm walking the dog, or I'm putting it up on SoundCloud for someone I'm collabing with. I want to make sure it's at a level that equals something else that they can reference it to. That's when I'll put in an L3, but I'll never keep the L3 on the master on a mix. It would just be this to glue it together.
Just for reference purposes. Sure, great. Well, wonderful. Michael, this has been absolutely awesome. I think you've done a fantastic job. I really love the generous deep dives you've done on so many of these questions.
The thing is, there's no such thing as a secret in this industry, and I always find it funny that people are like, oh, I don't want to tell anybody that. It's like creative ideas. Share them. Give them away, because you can always come up with another idea. When it comes to mixing, I want you to have a better mix. Whether you use Waves plugins or other ones, I would appreciate it if you use Waves, but I want you to have the ability to use all of the experience that people like me and Justin and others. I mean, I've been doing this for 30 years. I'll tell you anything I know, because I want you to be happy and I want you to succeed.
Yeah. And it's really not just about knowing any one trick or having any one tool and what makes someone great. It's their creative vision, their experience, and
yeah, it is. Yeah. And how clean the studio is.
Well, fantastic to have you here. We got, again, a lot of great thank you notes in here from folks saying great presentation. It looks like we've had almost 1,000 people wander in and out over the course of the hour, and almost a half we've been here together. And we've had concurrently on the stream, usually about 100 folks staying tuned the whole way through. So that's been absolutely wonderful. Thank you guys for joining us. If you want to try out any of the Waves plugins we looked at for free, go to waves.com, where you can try out all their stuff with a nice 7-day free trial. They've often got great deals going on there. And Michael, if people want more from you specifically and want more of your great deep dives on this kind of thing, where are the best places to keep up with you and what you're doing?
Well, you can, I'm happy if anybody emails me directly. It's MichaelP P for Peter at waves.com. So Michael P at waves.com. If you have a question, I will answer it. Please know, if you send a mix and you want an opinion, you will get an opinion. And some people don't like opinions if they're blunt, but I'm very blunt. But I'll always give you a why something needs fixing. I'm on a lot of the Waves videos. There's a ton of webinars that you can go and see where I've done masterclasses with Chris Lord-Alge, Andrew Sheps, Piper Payne, different people. They're all on the Waves website under Learning. Go enjoy. They're all free.
Michael, wonderful to have you today. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you guys for joining us. This has been Justin Coletti of Sonic Scoop, along with Michael Pearson-Adams of Waves.
Peace.
Thanks for hanging out with us. See you next time. And I have ended the stream. Nicely done.